Welcome to the Radiant Mission podcast. My name is Rebecca Twomey, and I'm here with my amazing sister and co-host, Rachel Smith-Smith.
Hi, guys.
Welcome, and thank you so much for tuning in today. We are on a mission to encourage and inspire others as they navigate through this life and with their relationship with Christ. And just a quick reminder, we are a faith-based podcast, so we're approaching things from a biblical lens, and we'll be approaching today's topic from that lens too. Last week, Rachel shared her very real struggle with secondary infertility. And today, we are continuing to talk about deep things. October was Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, and the purpose of that awareness month is to shine a light on a topic that often lives in the dark for so many women. And I have to be honest here, I really did not and could not have understood this or the aspect of it being a topic that lives in the dark had I not experienced this myself a couple of months ago. It is very isolating and it's difficult to discuss openly. It is complex, it's layered, and I just hope that today we can shine some light in the darkness. So that is our topic. Nice and light.
Yeah.
Now, if you are going through something related to this right now, I just want you to know that we are sending a lot of love. I know that it's not easy, and we hope that today's episode will encourage you. I know that this is very sensitive, and if you don't feel that you're in a place to hear about stories of miscarriage or loss, protect your heart first. So
Yeah.
it's important.
Yeah.
And if you've been listening to all of our episodes, you likely already know that I had a little bundle of joy this year at the end of March. He just turned 7 months 2 days ago. At the recording of this, that is 2 days ago at the recording of this.
I can't believe he's 7 months.
He is 7 months and huge and adorable.
Yes.
Very happy and jolly.
The biggest, jolliest baby.
I know you always say that he's a jolly baby.
Yes.
He really is, though. He's a happy guy. He wakes up from his naps and I see him on the monitor and he is not crying. He's just like looking around and everything. And you go in and he's just a happy guy. It's very nice.
Yeah.
I do have to say, it makes me wonder. I think that maybe his very calm entrance into this world via home birth might have something to do with his demeanor.
Yeah. Or it could be his dad's personality.
It also could be.
I've visited you twice since you've had him, and I do not think he cried one single time either time I was there.
It's because he was being held the whole time. He's a happy guy. If you're paying attention to him, or even just if he's sitting on your lap or whatever, he is a happy guy. He really only fusses when he gets left alone for too long. He likes attention.
Yeah.
Who doesn't though, right? What baby wants to be left alone?
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, most people know if they've listened that his birth was completely spirit-led. If you missed that, listen back to episodes 8 and 9. And I definitely had a night and day recovery compared to my first with Brooke, which was a C-section. And after my C-section, I didn't really exercise. I shouldn't say really. I did not exercise for a year, at least. I felt totally debilitated after that. Nothing was the same. I'm sure you had a similar experience.
Yeah.
With your C-sections potentially. You don't feel right.
Right.
But after Ben, things were very different for me. I felt a lot better. And so that's where kind of
so much energy.
It was almost weird. And I had to kind of taper myself because I felt so good that I was doing too much and I knew I was going to push myself too hard. And so I'd have to remind myself to pull back. It was this whole psychological cycle that I definitely went through because I would tell myself, no, I'm going to stay in bed. Like, I'd say to Mike, I need you to help me. But you know me, I have a hard time
Mhm.
relaxing
Yeah.
and not go, go, go. That's just the type of personality that I am. And so,
Yeah, you and I talked but like right after your birth with Ben, and we've talked about it a lot since then, the concept of the first 40 days after birth
mhm,
and how other cultures prioritize that of whether you feel great or not, new mothers just resting, nourishing the body, having other people care for you and the baby because it's called the fourth trimester, where you really just have to feed your baby. But we don't live in that culture. We live in a culture of like, get up and get out of bed the second
yeah,
you have the baby.
yeah.
Even with a C-section, it's like that to an extent.
Yeah,
And
who were we talking to recently that, or maybe it was something that you and I were sharing on social media, that was something like the average woman for a vaginal birth, you stay in the hospital for 24 hours, or if you have a C-section, it's like 48 hours.
yeah.
That basically is our culture, and I think that that actually is a great point that you're bringing up, Rachel, that I want to address today with women, is that our culture is not aligned to what we're being called to do as women from a biblical perspective in many ways, because
Mhm.
we are called to rest our bodies, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
not just for birth, but even in general. That's why we have the Sabbath is
Right.
supposed to be for I don't even do a good job with that.
Yeah.
I still struggle with that because I don't even know how to slow down sometimes. But that is something that I learned through this that I think, could have contributed to what ended up resulting, what happened with me, which I'll share a little bit more about in a minute. But it's just something that I want women and families and anybody listening to really hear. You may need to hear this today. Like, take some time to rest. It's okay to not be on all the time.
Absolutely. I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast before, but as you know, my family and we try our best to keep the Sabbath on the seventh day, which is Saturday. And sometimes Christians have a hard time with people suggesting that. But what we have found in the several years we've been doing this is initially it is very hard. It's very hard because it goes against the way you were raised, your culture, the society around you. But when you force it, and the biblical command is
When you
literally to
force it.
just do not work, to not do any work, to just rest, that what comes from that is so much blessing.
Mm.
And I have learned so many spiritual lessons and things about our good Father by resting on the Sabbath. It's like an action that I'm doing, which is really taking out all action, has taught me things about him and the way that he has created us and what he wants for us. And it's all out of his goodness. So it's what is a burden is this culture of go, 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 go until you're worn down and burnt out and you can't even go on anymore because this is what's the beauty. This is in the 10 commandments, the fourth commandment. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy is because the designer of our bodies told us that we can't keep go, 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 going, that the designer of our bodies, he did not create man for the Sabbath, but he created Sabbath for man, that we need this. So there's just bigger spiritual pictures there. And to get us back on the birth
That's,
and pregnancy train
yeah.
is that our bodies need rest then more than ever
Yes. That's very
because we just
wise.
created life.
Yes. That is very wise advice. I had a quarter life crisis, I like to call it, when I was around 25 because I had been working multiple jobs, always was go, go, go. And I got to the point where I broke and I was
Mhm.
like, I can't live like this anymore. And I find myself there sometimes because I do also work full time and I've got two little kids and we've got the podcast and everything else that comes along with life. And I find myself there too. And I definitely feel like I'm being called to the Sabbath more and to really, embrace it for what it is. My 8 loads of laundry can wait until Tuesday night.
Yeah.
You know what's sad, actually, speaking of laundry, total side tangent here. When this whole situation happened where I had a miscarriage, which again, I'm going to share more on that, it was a big call for me to step back and say, I'm doing too much. My body is so stressed out from all the things that I'm doing. Like, what can I give away? And for years, Mike had been saying, we should hire cleaners,
I've been saying that too
housekeepers.
to
You've been saying that. And Mike has
you.
been saying, yeah, that's right. You have been saying that for probably longer
Yeah.
than him. And I don't know if it was a pride thing or what, because it was always like we grew up doing chores and cleaning and taking care of our home that I felt in many ways like I was a failure by hiring people to come clean my house. But then I had to really take that moment when this happened to say, when else am I going to clean my house? I work all day and have kids and work from home. So we're living in the house making messes.
Right.
And so I did make that call when we finally decided to, when all that happened, to have cleaners come. But here's where the funny thing comes in. This is how little time I have found. I have a basket of laundry that's sitting outside of this room that's towels and stuff for downstairs from when everybody was here a month ago.
Yeah.
That we had a bunch of people come into town and it's clean laundry that needs to be put away. I just realized that our cleaners are coming in 2 days and I brought it down here the last time they came 2 weeks ago. So I have had a basket of clean folded laundry sitting outside the store for 2 weeks. Just goes to show how little time I still
Hey,
have them.
I am not one to judge. Currently, right behind me, out of frame, are 3 baskets of laundry crammed away in this office room so that we didn't have to look at it anymore because I have not been able to do laundry for my own. I feel like 99% of people listening to this right now will get this is laundry is the never ending story of
It
all our
never,
lives.
I was so happy when everything was done. It was so much laundry. And I'm like, this is
Yeah.
amazing. And guess what? I'm back to the exact same amount. I have a big
I
pile in my laundry room, plus this thing that I need to put away.
I have literally thought before as I sat on my bed folding countless piles of laundry that I really look forward to heaven for a lot of reasons. But one of those is I cannot imagine that we have to do laundry there. Like, I don't know how it's going to work.
That's what hell looks like, a laundromat.
Yes. Yeah. Hell is my bed filled with the endless baskets of laundry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, this was one of the things. And so you really made a great point on how we don't take enough time to rest. And I did eventually give it up and I did take time to rest for the 8 weeks that I had off of work. And that's another thing. It's definitely very heartbreaking in our culture that 8 weeks and then you're working and nursing and going through all those things. But that's a different episode, right?
Right. Yeah.
But then here's where things get wild. One of my friends, she did this program called 75 Hard when she had her first, who's a couple months younger than Brooke. And I remember thinking, wow, she is crazy. Like, how is she doing this? That's insane. But then after Ben, had actually had a baby right after Ben too, within a couple of weeks. So I think 2 weeks actually, I think our kids are apart. And she was talking about starting up again. And I was like, you know what? I'll do it with you this time. And I decided to do it. And I have to say, it's not the hardest thing in the world, but it's also called 75 hard for a reason. It is a mental challenge more than it is anything else. So for those of you listening, if you don't know what I'm even talking about, this really crazy guy put together this program. He's very intense.
Is
Um,
he like a personal trainer or something? What is his background?
that's a great question. I don't know. I think he might be military though. I know a
Okay.
lot of military people are affiliated with this, like Jocko,
Mhm.
who's a military guy. Um, just intense fitness people, always pushing the limits of their mental and physical capacity, on the train of what can I achieve next? I will say that their mission is a very worldly mission. It's not biblical at all. They're not Christians as far as I can tell. Um, so it wasn't about that for me.
Wait,
I
but
just thought,
describe what 75 hard is again, because I kind of interjected
yeah,
with the
I just
question.
thought that it was something that would be cool if I could do it to help, like, start getting active again after not doing anything. And it felt like a challenge that I could achieve.
Right.
So here is the challenge: for 75 days, you do these things every day. If you do not do any of the things I'm about to say, then you start over from day one. And you keep doing this until you finish 75 days of this straight. And so it is 2 workouts a day for 45 minutes each. And one of them has to be outside. And there's reasoning behind why it has to be outside, because it's good to be outside. It's good for your body to get the sun and everything like that. You can do any workout. It doesn't have to be like CrossFit or a HIIT workout. You could walk with your family, whatever it is that's achievable for you. It's about consistency. It's not about like, let's kill ourselves here.
Mhm.
And except for when I get to the next one, which is drink a gallon of water a day. And
Until you die.
this is where I have beef with this program. It was created by a man who weighs, 290 pounds, who is a fitness person. Women, we don't need that level of water. So that was where I struggled with the most. Then you also have to take a progress picture every day so you can kind of see how you're progressing. You have to follow a diet, and not a weight loss diet, but follow a food or meal plan that is focused on being healthy. No cheating. So you're not eating cakes and candies and stuff, and no alcohol, which was the easiest one for me since I don't drink alcohol really. And I just came off of being pregnant.
Right. Yeah.
That's the easiest when you're already not used to not doing that. So that's pretty much the challenge. Do it for 75 days. Mike decided to do it with me, and he failed on day 14. He forgot to take a progress picture, which to me is the easiest one, but we're all
Isn't there
different.
also reading like 15
Oh,
minutes of personal development?
yes. Thank you. I
Yeah.
forgot one
I only even have these memorized because of your
because I posted it every
updates
day.
on your Instagram stories every day. We all got
Yes.
to live it with you, except not having to drink the water with you.
That's so funny. Yes, you also have to read 10 pages of nonfiction. So something that is going to be beneficial. So that was actually another positive, is I got an opportunity to finish reading some books. I read Spiritual Women's Guide to Spiritual Warfare during that time. I read
Right.
Love and Respect during that time. I read a bunch of books that really were helpful. And then I also committed myself during 75 Hard to do a Bible study every day in the Bible app, YouVersion Bible app. So I will say this about that time. There was so many benefits from doing the program. Aside from the water, I honestly didn't have a lot of qualms. Reading something was good. Making sure I was eating good. I didn't eat dessert or have soda or anything for
It
75
seemed
days. That was
it
good.
seemed like sometimes it was hard when it was 11 o'clock at night and you had to do your second workout and you're like, oh my gosh,
Yes.
I did the second work. We would
Yes.
literally we started recording back then, right?
We did. We started
Yeah.
recording right when I was
Cause
at the end of it.
right. Cause I remember you being like, I gotta go do a workout after we record this. And it was like 10 o'clock at night.
And that's the level of commitment. There was a couple of times that we had to walk in the rain. We walked in the
Yeah.
thunderstorm once, and I was doing some crazy prayer, like, because we had the babies with us that time and they were in the stroller or whatever. And, one of us could have gone home with the kids and the other one finished and then swapped or whatever. But I thought what made logical sense to me was like, "Hey, Lord, can you just hold off the rain for a couple more minutes so we can finish?" And it was so wild because I was walking around on this cul-de-sac because I saw the storm just like coming in like this. And where I was completely clear and dry. And Mike kept going to me, "It's coming. It's coming in. It's going to rain." Like he kept amping it up. And I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, buddy. I'm having a moment with the Lord here. He's holding it on." And then Mike eventually it was like he didn't trust it and he broke and ran for the house. And then as soon as he did that, then I felt kind of defeated and I was like, "All right, I guess I got to go back." And it still wasn't raining in that spot. It was a wild time. Anyway, it's a whole
Yeah.
side tangent. So I did this program, and towards the end of the program, I started to not feel so good. Meaning my knees hurt so bad. It felt like my knees were broken. And, that's very likely when you're doing 2 workouts a day. And sometimes I was doing heavier lift days. And, one of our workouts was always a walk. Sometimes I would do weights with Mike. He was doing leaner, stronger, or something. I don't know. Forget what it's called. And I started to feel tired, very tired and sore. And it made sense for what I was doing. But as the days were approaching where I was about to finish this challenge, I thought, you know what? This feels like pregnancy.
Yeah, what you said to me is I remember we're on the phone because you were at the grocery store and you said, I feel so, my body is so worn out. I feel like I have Lyme disease. And I go, could you be pregnant? Because that's exactly what you said when you were pregnant with Brooke before you took a test. And I
It
said, you
was.
should take a test. And so you're like, yeah, I was kind of thinking that, but I don't know because you were only 3 months postpartum and hadn't got your cycle back.
Mm-hmm.
And both of us don't have experience with that to know how that works.
Mm-hmm.
So because you were at the grocery store, I'm like, you should just buy a test. Take one.
And I did, right?
Right.
That
Yeah.
is something that I do want to address. We've talked about fertility related things on the podcasts quite a bit lately. And we've
Yeah.
talked about birth control and my past history with birth control. And we've talked about fertility awareness method, which is technically another form of birth control if you're
Yeah.
using it for that. And when we came out of things with Ben, I felt very convicted. And honestly, a lot of this came out of your story, Ray, that for so many years you tried to have a baby and couldn't have a baby, that I felt like, why, why? Why
Hmm.
am I going to do this? Outside of what, most people be like, well, because the doctors say to wait this long and to do this and do that. I think God is way smarter than any
Hmm.
doctor. I think he
He
is a
absolutely is. Yeah.
brilliant genius, and
Hmm.
no doctor could ever come up to the Lord. And I think that he has made our bodies perfectly, and
Hmm.
he has made us to be how we are, and he knows what our plans are. And if he allows somebody to get pregnant right after they just had a baby, then that is what is supposed to happen.
Hmm.
And if they don't, then that's what's supposed to happen.
Right. Yeah.
So I came out of things with Ben and post Ben, I guess I should say, that we're done with family planning
Hmm.
on our accord. It's up to the
Right.
Lord, and that, we're going to let him decide. And so, like you said, we knew that we could get pregnant because you don't need to have a period to ovulate. you can
Mhm.
still ovulate. And the timing kind of lines up that when Ben started to sleep longer stretches at night, it must have triggered my ovulation to start. And so I was ovulating, but I hadn't had a cycle.
Mhm.
So, yeah, Rachel is right. She told me to take a test, which I think that's happened every time that I've ever been pregnant is it's usually Rachel who knows first. And it's like, you need to do something about this. You're saying the same things that you always say.
Yeah, you have consistent symptoms.
Which is kind of nice, but it's also kind of crazy because to feel like
Yeah.
all your bones are breaking apart is
Mhm.
definitely a wild thing to feel.
Yeah.
Um, so I get fatigue and achiness really, really wild. And so I did take a test and there was a second line. And I sent it to you and you're like, whoa. And I showed it to Mike and he said, that's not a positive.
Yeah.
The second line was very faint.
It was
And
very yes, it was very faint, but the fact that I could see it in a picture and we know a line is a line.
mhm,
So it was like, you know, kind of like it's kind of one of those things for me that like we need confirmation here because from my experience taking hundreds of pregnancy tests over the years, I had once where I got a very faint line and I wasn't pregnant because it was just like an indentation line from the ink.
mhm.
Some tests are bad or whatever. So it is, one of those things where I mean, this is kind of how it is in every early pregnancy is the first time you take a test, it's kind of like, oh, what does this mean? Like you're
Yeah,
figuring it out.
yeah.
And so then you had Mike saying to you, like, there's no line there. I don't see a line.
Yeah, he was very confused on the the fact that lines can be fainter than darken. Like I don't know that he was understanding how it works when it's reading how much HCG is there. That the
Right.
more is there, the darker that it's going to show.
Right.
And obviously, we knew that this was probably very early, and
Right.
so that made sense. I actually reached out to you to call him because I was getting so frustrated that he was saying it's not dark enough to be positive. I'm like,
Yes.
that doesn't make any sense. A line is a line is a line, and any second line is a line. And I knew from what I was feeling, I almost
Right.
felt gaslighted, you know?
Yes. That's
I want to back up by defending him too,
right.
because the reason why he was saying this is because I think he saw that glimmer in my eye of excitement. And he also knew I hadn't gotten a cycle. And so he was very worried that it wasn't pregnancy and that it was me getting my cycle back and that I would be disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
And what he didn't understand then that we talked about after was I would be okay with whatever is going to happen. I would rather it be the real thing and not try to pretend
Right.
it's something that it's not. That's not going to make it better. You know,
Right.
if
I
you think
explained to
line
him,
and you go, oh, well, it's just your period coming. That does not remedy the situation.
yes. I explained to him when I did talk to him about it at that time, and I explained how pregnancy tests and HCG work. But I also said because he said that same sentiment to me, which was understandable. But I was like, you can't make someone feel, you can't control someone's feelings.
Mhm. Yes.
So whatever is going on, what I even trusted more than a faint line on a pregnancy test was the way that you were describing how you were feeling. That to me meant way more because you were laying around on the weekend napping. And that is like the last person I know that would do that. You run on like 3 hours of sleep a night. So, and he was like, yeah, I guess you're right. And so, yeah, it was a confusing few days, I know, for you and for him.
It was definitely confusing and it was it's one of those moments where I knew what my body was experiencing like you said. I knew I was pregnant too because exactly like you said, I do not take naps. I do
Yeah.
not rest unless I'm broken down in pregnancy.
Yeah.
And then that's it, and because that's how things were going, I knew
Mm.
that I was. Then this test, and I took a couple more, and all of them had a faint second line, but they were faint. And as the days went on, they were getting fainter. And I knew after, I kind of always felt a little funny about things, mostly because of how Mike was responding to it. It was hard for me. But also, a couple days in, when they weren't getting darker, I knew that something wasn't right. And then we were texting. We weren't even on the
Mhm.
phone. You texted me something, and it was the way you texted. I knew exactly what you were thinking, and that you were
Yeah.
thinking the same thing that I was thinking, which is that perhaps the baby is not continuing to progress. And so, timeline wise, I finished 75 hard on a Monday. I found out that I was pregnant Thursday or Friday of that same week by test. Obviously, I knew before that. And then by the weekend, I want to say it was by like Sunday and then maybe into Monday, I knew that the baby did not survive because the line was getting fainter and not more prominent. And then on Wednesday, I started bleeding. And that was when it all kind of came together. And I think that I've heard stories about this, about how sometimes a woman, in order to pass the baby, she has to become connected with that fact that, sometimes women have a miscarriage and they don't pass the baby and they go to the doctor and the doctor says, oh, well, here's some pills. And they give you misopril or whatever, the abortion pill to force everything out of your uterus. And they tell you, well, because you didn't pass the baby, that's why you have to take this. But what I've heard is that our minds and our bodies are all connected together. And sometimes it takes us clicking with what's going on with our body for our body to take action on that. And so I honestly feel that by the time I took the test, the baby had probably already passed. But because I didn't realize it, it took seeing it get fainter and clicking in my mind going, okay, this is not progressing. And once my mind made the connection, my body made the connection and then allowed the baby to pass through.
Mhm.
That's at least my analysis on the situation.
Yeah.
So the baby passed. I started bleeding Wednesday, but then on Thursday is when the actual baby passed. And I say the baby passed, and I am actually excited to share this part of the story because I think that it's a miracle.
Mhm.
It was August 25th that this happened. So, for reference, the day that we recorded the episode with Evan on her miracle baby was the same day that this happened.
Mhm.
How crazy is that? Like,
Yeah.
um, our baby, this would have been our third baby, passed in the middle of the day. And then we recorded that night. And I just knew that I wanted to keep going with recording that night because I just knew I needed to hear her story and
Mhm.
the hope that lives behind that story too. And
Yeah.
because even though I was going through a moment of grief,
Mhm.
I knew that what she had to share was so powerful and like I needed to hear it. And I did. And it was amazing.
Yeah.
And you said, that was one of your favorite episodes. I agree, because it just is
Yes.
such a reminder of God's promises to us.
Absolutely.
So, um, here's where the miracle comes in.
Mhm.
Most people, when they have an early miscarriage that happens as early as mine did, they're never going to see anything because the baby is so small. It's
Mhm.
tiny, teeny, teeny, tiny. But for some reason, I got to see my baby. Um, I had changed my pad and had to go to the bathroom. And meaning I had changed it earlier. And then when I went to use the restroom not too long later, I looked down and there was something very tiny. There was nothing else but this. It was the only thing there. And I really feel like the Lord left this baby there for me to find. And when I say baby, everyone thinks of big babies that are born, but this was a tiny, just beginning to develop baby. I
Mhm.
would estimate based on what I saw, and maybe I think you agree too, probably
Yeah.
about 6 weeks because it had started to develop ears. It was starting to develop ears and it had a nose, and you could see where like the eyes were going to be. Um, but it was the size of like a sesame seed. And it
Yeah.
had a teeny tiny cord and a teeny tiny placenta. And I easily could have missed it, but I had taken a second to look and saw it, and I placed it in the palm of my hand, and I was just in shock. I was like,
Mhm.
I was too shocked to be sad, to be honest with you. It was, it gave me joy and it actually brought me happiness that I got to see the baby. And it also, of course, validated how I had been feeling,
Right.
that I knew I was pregnant, even though midwife Mike didn't think so.
Right, that this wasn't you getting your first postpartum period. There
Yes.
was a human being there. And
Yes.
that's what when you, um, texted me that that had happened, that was the first thing that I thought, that this really was a gift of from the Lord. Like, yes, you were losing or you lost your child, and that is heartbreaking. But amidst that, he still gives us good gifts, and this
Yes.
child was a gift, and
Yes.
you were able to have the confirmation that your feelings and everything was correct, and that you could physically see your baby.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely felt like that was a blessing, that I got the opportunity to just see and feel validated. And it was a good feeling. I also struggled, and this is where I do want to share with other women that are listening in, that all of us are on a different journey. Our personalities are different. The way we process emotions is different. And I had a hard time that first day knowing if I could break down or how, or I didn't know how, I was all in all sorts of ways not knowing how to feel. I wasn't as emotional that first day. And then my in-laws were coming into town the next day. And so I kind of felt like I had to be on. And also, with this is the interesting part of the story to me, because Mike didn't believe that I had a positive, yet he told his parents that I was pregnant. So like deep down he knew that I was.
Yeah.
So he had told them, and I knew something wasn't right very quickly, right? And so I was kind of like, "Oh man, I wish you didn't say anything." Because in our society, we don't know how to handle this with other people, right? It's like people that are very close to you, like you and I are very close, it's a comfortable thing to talk about. And I have a great relationship with my in-laws, but at the same time, this is not the kind of conversation that I know how to have with them. And
Right.
it's very different. So I kind of felt like I preempted them coming by telling them that I had had a miscarriage, because I honestly didn't want to talk about it when they
Mhm.
were here. So then we go through the weekend, and I was kind of treated as if like nothing had happened. And then that felt worse.
Mhm, yeah.
That felt even worse. I mean, my father-in-law was like, "Let's go pull all these weeds all day long." So I'm out there literally pulling weeds all day Saturday after this just happened.
Yeah.
And it just didn't feel right. It felt wrong. It felt like I wasn't able to really process things. And so after they left was when I was able to really start processing things. And it was almost like, well, what am I trying to get out of this? Do I want people to feel bad for me? Do I want to feel bad for myself? Like, what is it that I'm seeking here with grief? What is it that I'm grieving? And I was having a hard time trying to either put into words or understand within myself what even I was trying to do with this event that happened.
Mhm.
And I think that the biggest thing is I was trying to look for the lesson. Like what lesson is on the other side of this that I'm trying to learn? And I know one of those big lessons was trust. We had gone into this saying we trust that the Lord knows what's right for our family.
Yeah.
And to get pregnant and lose the baby, I knew that that meant I had to trust him that he had a better plan.
Right.
And one of the reasons I mentioned 75 hard at all was obviously because it was going on, but there was another part of it, a facet that didn't come until more recently, now that we're in November, that I think that I was pushing myself too hard, and that I do push myself too hard physically, mentally, in basically every single way. And that this was another reminder of that, that I need to continue to slow down. I need to take care of my family, my kids that I already have. I already have a little baby that's still nursing. And so there was a lot of lessons that I started to take out of it as time went by. But I would say the biggest lesson and then the biggest healing moment came a week after I miscarried, because a week later, you found out that you were pregnant.
Yeah.
And when you called me and you told me that you were pregnant, it was one of the happiest moments of my life. Like, really crying.
Me
It was
too.
one of the happiest moments because I knew how much trust and faith and prayer and hope that, you were really leaning into the Lord for so long, and he had finally answered your prayer. And just like in that moment, whatever I had felt washed away. And I just immediately felt healed and healing from that. And I have to say, in many ways, too, you know, when I found out that I was pregnant, it was hard for me in the sense that I felt like it should have been you. And it was a hard thing for me to reconcile that I had a 4-month old at this point, or 3.5, however old he was. April, May, June, July, August. So he was almost 5 months, or was 5 months when I found out. Um, but that I really just felt like, this is crazy. Like, how is this happening to me? This should be happening to my sister. And so when I did find out it was happening for you, I felt relief, very relieved that this was for you and that the Lord was, answering your prayer. So it's it, it's taken us having to share these episodes in a certain order in order for us to
Right.
be able to even talk about this, because we weren't ready to talk about your story too early. But now that people know that you're pregnant, we can kind of share the behind the scenes, what was going on
Right.
with us while all this stuff was happening. And mind you, we're recording the podcast and everything during all of this. So
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
crazy what goes on in life behind the scenes.
Right. Like what's going on in real time. And I just kind of want to add my perspective as that I was actively in my, we'll call it my infertile time, even though I was healing and healed at that time, actually. But it was that week that we knew you were pregnant, and like we're just kind of trying to work out all of the what was happening because
Mm-hmm.
we were both concerned. It was a real teaching moment for me as well, because I shared this with you before, but I'll just be transparent and share what the process of processing infertility can be like. Is when someone that you care about is pregnant, there's different stages, like just speaking from my own experience. So the day that you got your positive pregnancy test with Ben, so that was what, like a year and a half ago or more.
Mm-hmm.
That was in, since I've shared my infertility journey now, that was in like the prime time heat of things for me before I started going through my physical healing. And I was actually really expecting to be pregnant at that time. And I took a pregnancy test and it was negative. And that's when those really hit me hard. And like 10 minutes after I took a test, you texted me a picture of your positive test.
Oh man.
And I'm saying this like it's nothing against you. I was
Yeah.
incredibly happy for you as my sister and the fact that I was going to have a niece or nephew. But I remember breaking down that that morning after that because it was always just a wrestle between me and the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
It was, why not me? Like, why is this happening? Like, what is wrong with my body? Like, it was even like this hatred for my body. And I remember crying about it. And my two little boys, I like close myself in the room because I don't cry in front of my children, or I didn't used to. Now that I'm pregnant, I cry all the time. But I have a thing about that. But and they were at the door, and I guess they could hear me like crying alone, and I could hear them whispering, "What happened? Do you think Pickles died?" They were
Your
really
cat.
worried. And then I realized, like, yeah, that's my cat. Then I realized, okay, I have to say something to them. And I opened the door and they could see the tears on my face. And my older son Everett is like, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Mommy really wants to have a baby and I can't. And so I'm really sad about it." And I remember him just looking at me and he just hugged me and he
Oh.
said, "I don't know what to do, but I hope that this helps." And in that moment, that was really special for me because it made me realize that my son now has empathy,
Mm.
and that these are teaching opportunities to bring our kids in on our pain. Cause they had no idea that I even wanted a baby. I
Yeah.
wasn't talking to them about that.
Yeah.
And then I do want to say, which, brings us back to this next pregnancy that you lost, is I never even told you about my reaction that way because
No,
it
I
was
was curious how you responded that time or how you
right.
felt that
I
time.
Because it wasn't about you. It was about me. And
Mhm.
I also, like I said, this is the complicated part about dealing with infertility when other people you care about get pregnant, because you care and you're happy with them. And I was ecstatically happy. And I had my moment. And then the year and a half plus passed. I went through my incredible journey of healing with the Lord. I had not yet received a child, but when you texted me the picture of your positive pregnancy test this last time, it really solidified for me how healed I was,
Mm.
because I didn't have any of those same feelings or emotions. All that I felt was concern for you, my sister, and this child and your family. It was like I felt like a different person.
Mhm.
And it ended up being a week later. So it was like I knew I was healed in my heart,
Mhm.
in my body, in my mind, that I could now process things like I am used to processing things.
Yeah.
And then 1 week later, I get my blood work that I am healed. And I literally was on the phone with dad telling him the results, when the fact that I had been emotional inspired me to pee on a test. And I saw a second line come up for me for the first time in years. And I had just said to our dad on the phone, literally minutes before, "It no longer matters if I ever have another baby because I know that the Lord has healed me."
Mm.
And so just, I'm only adding in my perspective to just kind of, like you said, we've kind of been leading up on how we've put these topics out that we wanted to talk about. And there's been so much going on behind the scenes in our lives, and just how the Lord has intertwined our lives, and how
It's true. Yeah.
we're learning things that we need to learn in
From
each
each
other's
other too.
lives.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like your experience, the Lord used to show me healing.
Yeah.
My experience, the Lord used to show you healing. And I just think that's it's such, it's a beautiful picture, like not just as us as sisters, that we can walk together in these things, but this is what it means to be in the body of Christ, that we bear each other's burdens, that we grow from and with each other, because that's ultimately the Christian faith. The Christian faith isn't something you can do in isolation. You have to do it with other people. And
Hmm.
so our growth happens with other people.
Absolutely. And I think what you said there too about, us growing from these experiences, and you knew that you were fully healed when you could also be happy for what I was going through, or, be there for me in that way. I think it's a big struggle for a lot of women, especially those that are going through infertility, or maybe they just went through a loss and now it's like I'd love to have another baby. Is It's very important for us to remember that we're on our journeys, and that we are on the journey that the Lord has set forth for us. We're not on anybody else's. And then it doesn't do any good to compare yourself to what another person's journey is like. That's something I hear way too much of is, I don't understand why this person gets this when I can't. It's a natural thing for all of us to feel, but we just have to remind ourselves it's because they're on a different path and we're
Yeah.
on our path that the Lord has for us. It's natural to think those things, but we can't get stuck in those things because our lives come in seasons. And that's actually a passage that I want to share. It's something that I really it stuck out to me as we were planning for this conversation, and as I was really thinking about the season in my life as being in my childbearing years and having kids and whatnot, but then also experiencing a loss. And it's from Ecclesiastes. It's in chapter 3, but it goes like this: a time for everything. There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. What do workers gain from their toil? I have seen the burden God laid on the human race. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is the gift of God. I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it and nothing taken from it. God does it so that people will fear him. Wherever it has already been and what will be has been before, and God will call the past to account. And I saw something else under the sun. In the place of judgment, wickedness was there. In the place of justice, wickedness was there. I said to myself, God will bring into judgment both the righteous and the wicked, for there will be a time for every activity, a time to judge every deed. I also said to myself, as for humans, God tests them so that they may see that they are like the animals. Surely the fate of humans is like that of the animals. The same fate awaits them both. As one dies, so dies the other. All have the same breath. Humans have no advantage over animals. Everything is meaningless. All go to the same place. All comes from the dust and returns to the dust. Who knows if the human spirit rises upward and if the spirit of the animal goes downward into the earth? So I saw that there is nothing better for a person than to enjoy their work because that is their lot. For who can bring them to see what will happen after them? This is a crazy passage. I don't know if you felt the same way, but it essentially to me meant there are seasons in life, and although we are pursuing Christ and we're pursuing the Lord, He is the ultimate judge.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, we don't know what's going to happen to us.
Yeah.
And so it's very important for us to remember the lessons that the Lord is trying to teach us and to follow on His path. I don't know if you had any other takeaways from that one.
Yeah, I think that is definitely a good takeaway. And there's so much that could be said of all of that. What stuck out to me is he has made everything beautiful in its time,
Yeah.
and he has set eternity in the human heart. And so it's, to me, kind of the summary of it is that he is in control, and we are created beings just like animals.
Yes.
And as we get to close here, I do feel like bringing it up just because it's what's going on in my life. And we are talking about this episode and loss. And I don't want to say a lot about it, but it is kind of crazy that this is the passage that you picked and the whole thing.
And way
Because,
before I knew anything about this.
yes, my beloved dog of 14 years passed away. What was it, 3 or 4 days ago?
So,
And I've I'm grieving.
mm-hmm.
And as anyone, I'm sure, who's lost a pet that they are really, loved and cared about, you try to make sense of it. And the passage that I've been reading the past few days was this one: is who knows if the human spirit rises upward and if the spirit of the animal goes down into the earth. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I've been trying to reconcile, like,
Mm-hmm.
what happened to her?
Mm-hmm.
Where is she? And this is the best information on what happens to dogs when they die that we have kind of in the whole Bible, I've found over the past few days. And it's that God is in control. He's created all of this.
Yes.
Animals do have the breath of life. The word is spirit, just like humans do. And he is in control of it all.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what I take from this whole thing for anyone dealing with loss or death of any kind, is we don't really know, because we will return to the dust of the earth, and our spirit is in his hands.
Mm-hmm.
He has all of this under control in his hands. So we might, on this side of life, not ever receive a good answer. But like you mentioned, learning from these tests is the best that we can do.
Absolutely. We have to understand that in order to have the mountaintops, we have to have the valleys. There's a time for both. And if
Yeah.
all of our time was joyous and rejoicing, we wouldn't appreciate it, right? We
Yeah.
have to have these valleys. This is part of life. Um, I hope that this message has been encouraging to you. If you've been experiencing any form of grief, it's a process and it's okay to process it. I would just recommend the same advice that I gave to Rachel, which is pray for strength.
Yeah.
Pray for the Lord for strength and healing and to reveal to you what the lesson is on the other side. So thank you for tuning in and being on this journey with us. If you'd like to follow along outside the podcast, you can find us at The Radiant Mission, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, website, all the good stuff. And I'd like to close with Psalm 147:3. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Wishing you a radiant week.
Bye.